What's up, everybody? Let's take a look at the bones of the skull, and we're going to use Anatomy app in order to take a look at this in a 3D framework. You want to use Anatomy app, hit the link in the description below and enjoy 10% discount using the code OregonTrail10. All right, let's take a look at our bones of the skull. Here we have the frontal bone, this bone in pink, nasal bone here in yellow, maxilla in purple, mandible in tan, and then zygomatic here in this light green. Spin this around. Let's take a look at our lighter lateral view. You can see the frontal bone, parietal bone, occipital bone, and then you have the temporal bone, zygomatic bone, and sphenoid bone. Notice part of the temporal bone and part of the zygomatic bone make up this arch here. That arch is known as the zygomatic arch. That's your cheekbone. So then we can see the mandible. That's your lower jaw. You have the maxilla here. If we zoom in on the orbit, we can see that the orbit is made up of the zygomatic bone, portion of your cheekbone, the frontal bone, and the maxilla. Then we have the lacrimal bone here. Lacrimal bone's easy to identify because it has this depression in it where the lacrimal gland sits. And then you can see portion of the ethmoid bone here. We look inside of the nasal cavity, we can see the nasal bone, we can also see the ethmoid bone with a portion of the ethmoid bone making up the nasal septum. This portion here is known as the perpendicular plate. Then we can see the nasal conchae, which are bones inside of the nasal cavity, which help swirl the air as it's brought in. Then we can flip this around and we can take a look at sort of the inferior view or the bottom view of the skull. And we can see here's our mandible. Then we can see the inferior view of the maxilla. Here is your palatine bone. We zoom in a little bit, we can see portion of the ethmoid bone back here, but then we can see this is the vomer. So we have palatine, vomer, this is your sphenoid bone, and then in purple this is your occipital bone, and the big hole in the middle is the foramen magnum. So here's the occipital bone in purple, big hole in the middle is the foramen magnum, which is where your spinal cord is going to enter the brain, right? So that's where your brain stem sort of sits. And those are the bones of the skull. So go ahead, hit the follow button so we can learn some more anatomy together, and then hit the link of the Anatomy app if you want to use 3D software to help you learn and teach anatomy. Later.